Hello, this continues our study of ecosystems, and so we're going to just jump right in. So remember, an ecosystem is all of the living and non-living things or biotic and abiotic things that interact in an environment. Okay, so remember those terms, those are important, and I hope you remember which are the biotic and abiotic factors in this example. Now we're going to start to define the different parts of an ecosystem. The first is a habitat. A habitat is the place where an organism lives out its life. So for example, you might have an organism that lives in this hollowed out tree. You might have organisms that live in the soil among the roots. But these are a couple of examples of habitats. Also, there may be an organism, sorry about that. There may be an organism that lives in the water that's collected in this old tire. You might actually have an organism like this. This is probably a leatherback sea turtle that lives in an ocean ecosystem, like around a coral reef or something like that. Okay, so the place where organisms live is called a habitat. So it's like their home. All right, another term that we need to talk about is species. So a species is the smallest part of an ecosystem, you could say. So a species is the group of organisms that can mate, that means reproduce, and produce fertile offspring. So in other words, their offspring can also then go on to produce offspring. So different breeds of dogs are still the same species. They're all dogs. So think about maybe a rose bush too. So some rose bushes produce red roses, some of them produce white, pink. There's all different colors, but those are all still one species. In this case, you have the dachshund and the corgi, which breed to produce this dog. I can't remember what they're called. I can't remember. I'm so sorry. But anyway, this breed of dog is still part of the dog species. All right. Another example of a non-species of species that are different is donkeys and horses are different species, and they can breed. They can produce offspring, but their offspring, the mule here, cannot then breed with another mule and produce offspring, produce babies. But the mule does have, the reason this happens, the reason they breed donkeys and horses is because the mules actually receive traits or characteristics from both of the parents, both the donkey and the horse, and so they end up being very strong and they work very hard. But mules cannot produce offspring. To get another mule, you have to breed a horse and a donkey again. Okay. Another example, lions and tigers are not the same species. They can be bred together, but they produce ligers, and ligers cannot produce offspring. So even if you have a male and a female liger that mate, they will not produce any children. None. Okay? Because they're different species. Now, human beings of different races are still human beings. We're the same species. So no matter what the race of the male parent and the female parent, they can still produce offspring, and those offspring will eventually be able to reproduce and have children of their own. So human races are still all the same species, all human. Okay, the next term we want to look at is population. So population is all of the organisms of a particular species in the area, in the ecosystem. Okay, so for example, all of the green frogs in this pond are part of the same population. Now there are different types of frogs, and we'll look at an example. There's bullfrogs and there's leopard frogs. There's all kinds of frogs. So each one of those species is actually can form a population, but you can't have green frogs and bullfrogs in the same population. They're two separate populations. Okay, so population is the next step up from species. So species, and then all of the members of a species or all the organisms of a species are a population. Okay, for example, in this pond ecosystem. There are 3 separate ponds. And so the question is, are the largemouth bass, a type of fish, in these 3 ponds part of the same population? Okay, think about it. We'll discuss it in class. Okay. The next step up is when you get all of the populations, all the species populations, and then those are all together in one ecosystem, we call that a community. So a community is all of the biotic populations within an ecosystem. An example, again, all of these green frogs, that population, the population of the lily pads, and then whatever fish are in there, all those are part of the community. So if we have, this is an example of a bass here, a largemouth bass. So if those are in the water here, then all of the largemouth bass is one population, all of the green frogs are one population, and all of these lily pad plants are part of one population, and all together in an ecosystem, they are the community. So all of the biotic factors. Okay, here's the other example. And then if they're ducks, all of the mallard ducks would be a population, and that population would be part of this community. Okay, so one of the questions we'll be looking at in class is, in your chosen ecosystem, can you differentiate between the biotic and abiotic factors, first of all, and then can you identify the populations within the ecosystem that you've chosen? So I'll give you a little bit of time in class to work on that, but this is definitely one step forward in your project for the summative assessment. Okay, some class activities. We'll be doing Freyer model with some of the key vocabulary. You'll begin researching and investigating populations in your project ecosystem, and you will need to choose the format or the medium for your project when you present. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful, and be sure to answer the questions at the end. Thank you.